Right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Um, it's 4 o'clock sharp here in the Netherlands. We'll wait one more minute before we really get going to give some people the time to join in still, because I see some people coming in. So we'll give it a brief moment. All right. Let's get started with today's webinar, strategies for effective solution design and implementation. And good afternoon or morning to everyone. Welcome. Welcome at today's webinar. Let's get started. We will have two presenters for you guys today. George Pang, who is part of the pre-sales team, and myself, I'm part of the pre-sales team as well at Value Blue. Maybe George, nice for you to give a quick round of introductions.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so as Jeroen mentioned, I'm part of the pre-sales team here at Value Blue, been with the organization for 2.5 years. I've got a history in the enterprise architecture space, so 16 years in all. So hopefully we'll have a great discussion today and show you some good stuff.
Perfect. Thank you, George. For me, myself, Jeroen de Haas, a bit shorter with the company and not as nearly as long in the enterprise architecture space as George. Hence, George will be today our subject matter expert on the solution design part. Thanks for being here, George. This one has the slides on it. Before we get started, a little bit of hygiene webinar setup. And a couple of practical things. We encourage you to ask questions as always. So there is a Q&A tab in the box in your screen. We'll try to answer every one of your questions at the end of the webinar. Plus, after the webinar, we will send you an email. It will have the replay of the webinar and it will have the slides that we will show you here today. Plus, one more thing, you'll be asked to give us a little bit feedback through a short survey. Which always helps us to improve our webinars. All right, for the agenda of today, and I'm just going to put everything on the screen, we'll have two main topics today, which are the two of the phases within solution design. We will focus on the setup, deliverables, and who can benefit from it. George will talk you through that and show you live within BlueDolphin how per phase, how one of those deliverables work within BlueDolphin with a neat little feature that is brand new within the platform. And afterwards, we will share a couple of practical tips on how to get started right away. But first, I will shortly focus on a quick intro on solution design, basically a bit of a recap for the ones who are already familiar with it, and then we'll show you the results of the previously sent out survey, which we used to define the topics of today's webinar. So in short, solution design, as we see that only few projects are completed within time and within budget, that the common challenges are mostly around, for one, strategic planning. So basically, are you doing the right projects? And secondly, the project execution. So if I do a project, how do I make sure I do this right? With enterprise architecture, the part in the middle here, the enterprise architecture repository, we help organizations to effectively plan and execute their transformation and change projects. Now, if you are interested, and I'm going to pull up a CTA in a call to action in a moment where you can click to know more on the challenges and the what around solution design, then please feel free to watch the replay of our product launch webinar. I've put the link now in the bottom, which you will find over there. It will be up there for a minute. All right. So how does solution design fit in your enterprise architecture? The central component is the enterprise architecture repository that stores information about your business as well as your IT landscape. It lists various items such as processes, data, and applications, and how they are connected to each other. Getting this overview and insight is basically the basis for the next 2 steps. Strategic planning, the first one, is generally done by enterprise architects or project management offices. It helps them identify and prioritize transformation projects. It starts with modeling your business using tools like business model canvases and capability maps. It then looks at strategic objectives and goals to identify potential projects. It prioritizes the projects and looks at dependencies to create a transformation roadmap. And also sets guidance and standards for consistent execution of the projects, your governance. Then on the other part, that's where the solution design fits, which we're diving into today. So solution design is there to help you execute more projects on time and within budget. It is used in every project by the team executing that project. This again consists of a number of steps, right? Value refinement, requirements refinement, solution architecture. These steps we also shared in a survey beforehand, and we used that to see where the emphasis in our webinar should lay. But before we go there was one more very important point that I would like to make and how the 3 components go hand in hand with each other. So one of the big challenges of enterprise architecture is that architecture repository gets outdated very quickly. You can spend endless months to describe your landscape, but when you're done, a lot has changed already. So the only way to solve this is to make sure that the teams that make those changes are doing this using the same platform. Hence, it is so important to have solution design in the same system. So basically, if you don't do solution design in the same or on the same platform, you always be faced with some sort of outdated data. Well, enough for the intro of solution design. As said, there was a CTA below. Please feel free to watch that recap of the webinar. Let's take a look at the poll results that we have sent out earlier. So a couple of weeks ago, we have shared this poll, as you see here, and asked to rank the following phases from 1 to 3. So the value refinement, requirements refinement, and the solution architecture design. We did this to get an insight in which phase is most important to you and what you want to get a better explanation of. Now, maybe not totally surprisingly, but most often, 55%, the solution architecture design phase was ranked first. Basically, the purpose of this phase consists of creating your solution sketch or sketches, basically to visualize your envisioned solution, including existing and new components. The architecture designs are then created to validate the feasibility and desired outcomes in a structured manner. Typically, you create these for the different types as process flow, application, and integration designs. Then, secondly, the second most ranked one is the requirements refinement with 25%. Basically, this phase encompasses more the non-technical high-level design to support the idea and present it in a way that is understandable for all your stakeholders that you're working with. Also, as the name, of course, implies, the requirements are gathered. This is typically a more collaborative and multi-stage process, which can already start from the very first brainstorm session to the design and planning phases of the change. Well, and then last and ranked third was the value refinement phase within the poll. This phase focuses more on defining and aligning the value proposition of a solution with using, for example, a value proposition canvas, ensuring it addresses customer needs and pain points. This work is then translated into tangible deliverables through, for example, a service blueprint, which maps out the service experience, processes, and supporting systems to refine and optimize the solution delivery. Anyway, as said, we will cover the first 2 topics during this webinar. So the requirements refinement and the solution architecture design. We will show you what it is, who can benefit from it, and how to do it within BlueDolphin, followed by some tips for more effective use. George, I think that's the cue for you to show you what's up.
Good stuff. All right, so we're going in sort of a more logical order. Of course, the solution architecture phase was the highest ranked phase for further information, but we'll go through requirements refinement first. So first of all, a few tips to get started, and then we'll dive into a bit of a demonstration. So just a summary of what Jeroen had said already. So requirements refinement is about basically agreeing requirements. So nothing special about that, but involves a couple of other deliverables that are proposed, certainly in the BlueDolphin approach, one of which is the high-level design. So that's the first one that we'll cover within the tool itself. And the other one is solution requirements. So it is important to note that, of course, high-level designs, they're quite pictorial in nature, so they're designed for communication. Solution requirements tend to be a bit more structured. So they could be as part of a design, so basically a view in BlueDolphin in our case, but it could equally be in a list or just directly in the repository, for example. And of course, this isn't an exhaustive list even. And it's pretty obvious that product managers, for example, if you're developing software or other solutions, they would benefit from consuming high-level designs and solution requirements to build something obviously tangible that aligns to business needs. There's a big place of requirements for business analysts to play a big part as well. And it goes without saying, solution design involves solution architects as well. So let's take a look in the tool itself and see how it looks in action. And again, a few step-by-step tips to enable the creation of these designs. So I am in BlueDolphin now. You can see basically the phases that Jeroen has talked about already. So we've got the value refinement, requirements refinement, solution architecture design, and solution implementation. But let's first focus on the high-level design here. So just open up the view. And three main steps to each of the deliverables that we're going to talk through today. But for a high-level design, first of all, it's really important to make it look good, I would say. So you can utilize images, graphics, shapes, colors, anything to get the overall flow of the design across to your audience. So that's the important thing there. So creativity is certainly the key there. So just drag and drop. But of course, you've got this rich repository that you can draw from as well. So that also helps extend the communication to known elements or known components within the architecture. So if we take a look into here, we've got, well, some of you might recognize the notation. There's a port request form as part of this new support process. So that's actually a business object or a data object that exists in the repository that we can drag on. You might choose to leverage existing solutions or applications, for example. And well, Genesis here is actually part of the repository as well. It's actually something that another project team may have been thinking about implementing, but we can again drop it onto the page. But the other thing that really is important in terms of the, again, use of a high-level design is, well, using things like annotations, because it is ultimately about communication. So you use as much as in your toolkit to enable you to communicate effectively with your basically fellow designers or people that will sign off the designs, etc. Now, in our third step, moving on very, very quickly, is extending again that collaboration or explanation, as it were. So along with reusing components from the repository, so consistent terminology, for example, further annotations in the form of text, but also reaching through using the messaging system within BlueDolphin to, again, communicate your thoughts, do your reviews, request sign-offs, etc. So, for example, I've asked Jeroen a couple of days back, the flow within this high-level design needs a bit of clarity around it. So in that way, you get better collaboration and feedback, so those loops are much, much stronger. So let's take a look at the bit of a summary around it. So see, we've talked about the starting points for high-level design, so not an exhaustive list of components that you'll focus on. But what we do see is, well, a couple of key points here. So I've summarized it as I talk through the high-level design, but visual representation is really the most important part here in the high-level design. So don't think about structure too much. Think about communication, use sketches, diagrams, flowcharts, anything else. So it could be, images from your image banks anywhere around, because ultimately it's about getting buy-in from your non-technical stakeholders that would have requested certain changes, or you're working together with them. Also important is, of course, there are tools out there that you can just draw pictures with, but having centrally in BlueDolphin also creates an environment where you have different team members that can share ideas, challenge assumptions that you may have. So you saw use of the messaging to make better designs and ultimately better implementations. And it is iterative. So you refine the designs through further messaging and annotations and discussions, and you add more essentially to your designs as it becomes available. So it's not a one and done. So that summarizes a bit of the requirements refinement. But of course, the most popular piece of the puzzle was the solution architecture design. So no doubt there's a lot of solution architects in the audience today. Oh, this is maybe, just repeating what you know already. But of course, the BlueDolphin aspect is super important. And a few tips on getting started here. It is about optimizing and delivering solutions. So designing around the right constraints, principles, policies, also finding opportunities where you can reuse and leverage information already. So what we propose in the solution architecture phase, first of all, as Jeroen mentioned already, is the solution sketch. So this is much less of a formal sort of architecture design, as well, you're still reusing components and basically presenting what you think the solution should look like based on concrete architecture building blocks, as it were. Now, what we're going to focus on in terms of an example in BlueDolphin is the solution architecture design. So this is a bit of a catch-all, but it could cover essentially your process designs, so process architecture design, application component designs, technology, data, etc. So all of the traditional enterprise architecture domains, we've folded into a solution architecture design, but you focus on particular stakeholders. And who could be benefiting from these? Yeah, product owners, because they need the specification to develop something tangible. Again, your business analysts, and of course, solution architects would play a part in here. But this is your chance to reach out to the subject matter experts, so your domain-specific architects, data architect, application architect, integration architect. So it could be architects or maybe someone without architect in the name, but they know about the technical implementation side of it before it turns into a ticket or an issue within something like a Jira, for example. So let's switch over very, very quickly. And go into, in this case, we'll take a look at the process flow design. I should minimize that very quickly. And how this essentially starts off is, of course, with your current state. Yeah. But what we're saying, at least in the terms of solution design, is you don't bore the ocean and find everything as part of the current state. In our case, the project or the change is around omni-channel support, something global. So we gather the information from the existing repository, including here processes, some business objects, it could be people as well, drag it from the repository and reuse it on the canvas. So that's your starting point. That's why you've got left side of the current state. Secondly, you take what you have in the current and extend it to include what the future may hold. Yeah, so the target state in essence. And I've graded it out for the moment for clarity, but this would be, of course, additional processes in the context of process modeling, additional information that's required in there. Now, one thing you may have spotted in BlueDolphin previously is there is a marker to differentiate between what is real and what is not. So for example, this new SLA that will be implemented, that's actually part of an object lifecycle of a future state. So you can use that as part of visualization, as we see in a moment, but it brings a bit more clarity. So you've got a separated current state versus target state. You can perform further analysis around it. So the last step here is when you're presenting essentially the results of your analysis, the stakeholders need to understand exactly what's changed. So of course, with this future, current and future state sort of separation, you're able to instantly filter out the noise. So if we're talking about is specifically changed in our envisaged target state here, we can gray out the noise and start focusing on the conversations around, okay, how do we make sure that this new multi-channel support process is operating in the right manner, for example. And with solution design, it does depend on your level of, detail in essence, because the change whatever's changing in this new support process may not just be at this high level. That's where other disciplines can knit in. That's why we talked about business analysis through, for example, process modeling. So this is an elaboration of what we saw at the high level in terms of process design, but it fits equally into the solution design and solution architecture process itself. So a bit of a whiz through there, but let's take a look back at some of the tips. Okay, and summarize it on the page here. So what I explained at the start was you've got a separation between a current and target state. But it is important to note that you should focus on the right level of granularity. So it should be understandable. So therefore, when you're crafting these types of solution architecture designs, it should be just enough architecture, in essence, focusing on the change. So in this case, it was around a global 24/7 support process. So you don't model more than you have to. So present just enough detail to get your message across and gain that buy-in and collaboration, develop features and other things that you need to. And that also extends to the last point where we talked about process modeling, is decompose. Yeah, so break everything down as much as you can into consumable and manageable pieces, because when you're, obviously, perhaps you're the only architect focusing on change, fine, you can manage it. But when you've got a team to work with, share the load. So that's why manageability and collaboration is one of the key components of solution design. So hopefully that gave you a bit of a good overview of some of the artifacts or deliverables you can produce in solution design and how it works in BlueDolphin. And over to you.
All right. Thank you, George, for the information. I will get back to you in a moment with some questions. Then a lot of explanation, but how can you now get started in a very easy manner? So that's why we created 3 practical tips for you to get started with solution design right away. The first one, it might be a very obvious one, but pick a small and impactful project. By choosing something manageable, you can experiment more easily with a new way of working that brings stakeholders together. For example, designing a new feature of one of your products. This requires a business context, so your value refinement. It requires a representation of the advised design, so your requirements refinement. Then elements of that solution architecture need to be documented, basically, so your solution architecture designs. So as a second tip, use an easy to follow structure. As we proposed as well, and with the project flow that we showed, and maybe get back to in a moment as well, you may have a particular way of working, or perhaps it's a little dynamic. Using a structure such as the Value Blue approach could be a great starting point. So the outputs will become more predictable. And then lastly, well, it has been mentioned a couple of times by George already as well, iterate and update as you go. It isn't a one-and-one, of course. It's important to keep the conversation going, ensuring business alignment for every change or initiative being executed. That being said, I hope these tips you can take that to heart and get already started right after this webinar within BlueDolphin. Now, if you are interested in our solution design approach, then please reach out to your account manager. What I also want to emphasize in the bottom there, and I actually will start a poll. Then you can, and I'll end it manually, so it will be up for a moment. The 8th of April, we will be having our BlueDolphin Wave, so our product and roadmap update from our product manager. And then the 21st of May, very nice at the Rijksmuseum, for the ones that know that, a very nice museum in the Netherlands. We will have the Art of Enterprise Architecture with very nice speakers and sessions being hosted by us. That being said, I will leave that poll up for a moment that you can click something if you want to, and let me check whether we have a couple of questions in the chat. So we have one. I'm going to move the mic a little bit over here so that we both can use one mic. Otherwise, you guys are going to get crazy. We have a question around how to prevent changes to object relations on an agreed sketch when other architects working in BlueDolphin on different related solutions.
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously there's roles and permissions in BlueDolphin. So certainly some information you can block being edited, but typically we promote obviously a bit more collaboration. So, talking to people obviously is that one of the things that you can do in the first place, but otherwise you can lock down certain, for example, questionnaires that people shouldn't be able to edit unless they're of a particular role type.
I hope that answers your question. I had one more actually myself. You quickly showed it in the BlueDolphin environment, but the project flow with the different stages and the views on that. Maybe you can pull that back up on the screen for a moment.
Yeah. Let's go back to our projects.
So does that now mean that if I create a new project, that I don't have a list of my views that I need to add, but that I from here can immediately create a view and use those workflow templates from the get-go?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so that's one of our latest concoctions, as it were. So it's what we call a basic flow, so a standard flow for basically following our solution design approach, so that you don't have to think about the phases that you might want to run through. You don't have to think about the types of deliverable that you want to create. It's basically all pre-configured, and you can create them and then later access them much more quickly. So it accelerates basically the thinking approach, and yeah, you've got lots of Academy content that you can refer to as well to make sure you run it properly.
Thank you. I'm just going to get the slides back up. I have one more that I'm sure that many of you use still as well, or colleagues of you use. That's probably a Visio and a Draw.io, mainly for maybe high level designs and such, or solution sketches. What would be then the benefit of having those designs as well and all together within BlueDolphin or in such a workflow?
Yeah, so obviously with BlueDolphin, it's a centralized tool, so something designed for sharing with different stakeholders. So you can bring everything into one place, quick and easy to reference. But of course, don't forget you can obviously add in images and drop in other designs as well. So although you may not use BlueDolphin for absolutely everything even, I hope you would. Yeah, it just means that you only have one place to go to. You can do the commenting, you can do the messaging, etc., and make it easier. And also, the other thing is there is intelligence that is built in as well. So whereas with external tools, which are just for drawing, you can't reuse from your repository. So with a high-level design in BlueDolphin, for example, you have a combination, as we showed in the demonstration. You have some graphical elements, but also some reused elements, and you sort of get the best of both worlds.
All right. Thank you, George. I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. So I think then it's time to wrap up today's webinar. Thank you, George, for even coming to the Netherlands to do the webinar live with us here. Again, if you're interested in the design approach, the pop-up is I think still up. Plus the BlueDolphin Wave, the 8th of April, and our event on the 21st. After the webinar ends, you will get the recording of it, and we will send over the slides that we use today as well. So thank you for attending, everyone, and I wish you a lovely day.